Welcome to the 3Haunted podcast, where we bring you all things horror, supernatural, folklore, mythology, and all things that go bump in the night.
What's up, everybody? This is your co-host, Ashley Lunar Goddess, Gorilla Girl filmmaker and horror-loving cinephile. I'm just your average podcast-producing badass.
I'm John Thomas. Some would say that I go a little too far with my love of all things horror, paranormal, and meta, but I say, talk nerdy to me, and I'm all yours.
What's up, ghouls, gals, and all of our possessed pals? In today's episode, we'll be discussing exorcisms around the world. How do different cultures handle exorcisms? Is there a right way to do it? Join us and special returning guest Shane Roberts as we dive into this head-spinning world.
But first, a word from our network sponsor.
Are you looking for more awesome podcasts? Head on over to withoutyourhead.com for access to the Without Your Head podcast network, where you'll find a variety of podcasts sure to keep you entertained and coming back for more. All right. Pea soup is good for you. And bring us back.
But I don't like pea soup. It's so gross.
Neither did Reagan. She spit it all up.
All up, just right out.
Good.
Wow.
Welcome back, everybody. That's how you come back from a little sponsor.
You talk
And welcome,
about
Shane.
projectile pea soup.
Yes.
Welcome, Shane.
Oh, it's good to be back. Good to be back.
It's always good to have you back. Anytime we can have you come on to the podcast, I will absolutely jump on the opportunity.
It's my family away from my family.
Aww.
Yeah.
As dysfunctional as you may be, you know.
You're spooky family.
Spook.
I mean, aren't all families dysfunctional?
Yeah, it's not a family unless you're dysfunctional, I think.
Exactly.
Exactly. So we're just making sure it really feels like
exactly.
family.
Making me feel at home.
Wonderful. Welcome. Welcome home.
Welcome.
So, who wants to start? What did we learn? I love Shane came to the table with the idea of let's talk about exorcisms, because right now, Exorcist Believer is out and it's revamped the conversation. Revived the conversation?
Yeah. Let's go.
Revived the exorcism conversation. It's made it more mainstream again. So, let's talk about it.
What do you think about that, John?
I love how it's automatically me right away. Thanks, Shane.
What do you think about that?
No, I'm just kidding.
I still haven't seen the movie, but I've heard bad things. But no, I think it's interesting that. What do I think is interesting? I don't know. Different cultures do different things with their exorcism. I gotta go into my notes here. Hold on, Jesus.
They do different things for sure.
They do.
But I mean, we can start at the foundation. They all believe something similar, right? When it comes to the need for an exorcism.
Right.
Why would someone need to be exorcised? Because an individual is possessed by something that is not that person, whether it's a jinn or a demon or a devil or something else, spirits, like malevolent or evil spirits. There's something that's affecting another person and it has to be expelled, right?
Right. So I did a little digging in it, and I found out that it has a Greek origin with the word exorcism from exorkismos, which is I'm actually kind of surprised at that because of exorcism. When you think of exorcism, you always think of exorcism being deeply rooted in like Catholicism, right? And Catholicism has its roots in almost Roman roots, right? Or Italian roots. And the Romans, I don't see any mention of them when I was kind of digging. It's all coming from Greek or Middle Eastern or Judaic, or so it's very interesting to me. But that's what I was finding when I was digging a little bit further back, like as far as the origin goes. I also found out that Christianity is kind of the most polite, I would say, polite fashion of getting out demons or spirits from the body. It's like, our boss is better than you, so you gotta leave,
We're
kind of thing.
gonna ask you to go.
We're gonna ask you to go.
Right? Yeah, that's like the only one that doesn't allow violence, pretty much. Well, basically,
No,
well, I
no.
mean, it's one of them. It's not. I mean, because you can tie a person down, but like they don't really usually smack the crap out of them or anything.
Well, I think almost, John, like on that note, I think because of that, because they're not aggressive with getting the entity out, or they're kind of reserved in using only prayers and divine intimidation, I guess you could call it, that it almost becomes more violent for the host, because now you're telling this demon, like, hey, God's better than you. That means you got to leave that body. And so now, it being a powerful demon or powerful entity, has something to prove, and it wants to just, okay, well, look, watch me break this host's arm. you know I don't know.
It's contortion time.
It's
Right.
contortion time. Yeah.
So now the secret's out. Everybody in the circus is possessed. That's why we get our secret abilities to contort.
Sweet.
Secret's out. Yes. One could say that in pop culture and what's written about Catholicism and Christianity has been polite in how they approach exorcisms when they are deemed necessary, because it has to go through levels before they'll acknowledge this person needs an exorcism. And they do their prayers in the holy water. Depending how violent the host can get, restraints do come into play. And I was actually reading up a bit on the Catholic exorcisms, and they will incorporate, because in the movies you see we need a young priest and an old priest, and nowadays if it's an actual exorcism, a full exorcism, then they have to have a bishop, but they actually will employ like 9 or 10 other individuals to restrain a person just in case that person gets violent. And so that's got to be a little scary. Like if you are deemed that you need possession, but let's say a person's actually having like a mental health crisis and you got 10 people holding you down, that can be very triggering and traumatic. Even if you don't have a traumatic past, that's intimidating.
Yeah.
Here's my thing though. Shouldn't they, and I know a lot of the times they probably don't, but shouldn't they check to see if there's any like past like
Like
problems
mental
with
issues.
yeah, mental issues. That's where I was trying to go to. My brain farted for a second. Sorry.
Some of the stuff I was reading, they said in the past, the exorcisms, there were a lot more being reported because things like mental health and stuff were being treated as possession, and
They didn't have a
exorcisms
lot
were
of the
employed.
research back then. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, nowadays I guess they do psychological tests, and they do research, but I still have to believe that even some of the symptoms, because different cultures have different ways of describing. So let's backtrack. Like in Africa, they consider evil spirits that are being cast on an individual or an entire town that need to be exorcised out can be manifested in illness, plague, strokes, accidents. So really, a lot of things are covered in that, where it's like, hey, you are being plagued by an evil spirit. We're going to pray over you. We're going to do dance rituals around you and get this evil spirit away from you. Or in one thing I saw, like there was a documentary where a town felt the entire town was covered in an evil spirit cloud. And so they had like, it was actually kind of fascinating because they had all of their healers come out and do dances and chants and prayers to try and get it out from over the town. So in cases like that, where a lot of things are being umbrellaed under, attacks by evil spirits, and maybe it is an evil spirit driving that. Who am I to say? I don't know. I see mental illness could be attributed to that, case of scenarios. In fact, they might say that person has a mental illness because there's an evil spirit attacking them. In the Catholic Church, because they tend to be kind of more known for exorcisms and like official exorcisms and having full like books written for it on how to do it, and it's just a more elaborate world. Yes, they do tend to do a lot more, so they say, psychological research on an individual before saying they're possessed, they need an exorcism.
Yeah, typically nowadays they're kind of they're really strict when it comes to giving permission for an exorcism now. If a priest were to ask for an exorcism, the archdiocese will basically say no. Uh, we need sufficient proof, straight up. Like, and even with sufficient proof, it's still a very if, because it looks bad upon the Catholic Church generally when an exorcism is performed, especially if the person is harmed during the process. And there's just so much research when it comes to um, mental issues or mental instability, and there's actually a condition called uh, I forget it, or demonia or something like that, where you think that you have monomania, I think it's called, um, where you think you are possessed, you believe like factually that you are possessed, and so you act like you are possessed. And so how do you, as a exorcist, um, a priest, how do you determine, okay, is this mental issues or is this truly in fact? And I think they have to really look for stuff like, hey, is the furniture levitating, is blood dripping down from the walls, then at that point they can channel it up. What do you think about that, John?
I don't know.
Makes us glad we're not possessed.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
You can't possess a demon. So it's interesting. The Catholic Church, they consider true possession, you have to have several symptoms, some of which include prolonged superhuman strength, which that can be described by adrenaline and stuff, speaking a language the person has never learned, and knowing things they couldn't possibly know. So when they come to a possessed person, or a person claiming they're possessed, or family claiming their loved one is possessed, they look for those attributes. I'm sure there are other things, like Shane said, blood coming down from the walls and things levitating, but within the individual, they look for those things. And the priests that have, done interviews say that true possession accounts for fewer than 2% of the cases they're presented with. So what the people say, hey, I think they're possessed, or this person's behaving this way, it's actually a small amount of what they would say, yes, that is a possession case, which is interesting because 2% is still scary. Like any percent is still pretty scary.
Yeah, for sure. um, Especially when, like, everything we've read up on exorcisms and kind of what is entailed, like, even if it's say there is a priest on site, it's like there's a 50-50 chance that that person's going to survive the ordeal of being exorcised, which is crazy. Like, imagine that being your child. I don't know. It's nuts. But it's like I think it's still really, really fascinating, though, some of the things that you read. I was kind of going through the historical accounts of, like, some of the people that were like most notariable exorcisms. And one kind of came across my way where I was like, wow, that's really crazy. And it was in 1619. And her
Oh,
her
wow.
name was Mademoiselle Elizabeth de Ranfeng, Ranfaing. She became a widow in 1617 and was later sought in marriage by a physician. Um, so the physician was afterwards burned under judicial sentence for being a practicing magician. After being rejected, he gave her potions to make her love him, which occasionally or occasioned strange developments in her health. Proceeded to continuously give her some other forms of medicament. So she started experiencing these weird behaviors, um, and then it led to, ultimately, they decided to do an exorcism on her. And they began to exorcise her in September of 1619. So during the exorcisms, what's cool, so the demon that possessed her, it made detailed and fluid responses in varying languages. So she was speaking French, Greek, Latin, Hebrew, Italian, And here's the awesome part: she was able to recite the various individuals who examined her their thoughts and sins. So you don't hear that a lot in exorcisms.
Knowing things that you're not supposed to know.
Or speaking languages
Sounds like
that you don't know.
she was
Yep.
just checking off all the
Mhm,
boxes.
mhm.
Did she ever exhibit superhuman strength?
So she was further reported to describe in detail, with the use of various languages, the rites and secrets of the church to experts in the languages she spoke. She was even a mention of how the demon interrupted an exorcist. So there wasn't even a mention of how the demon interrupted an exorcist who, after making a mistake in his recital of an exorcism rite in Latin, corrected his speech and mocked him. So this
That's
demon's a
awesome.
straight up
Sorry.
pimp.
Okay. That is.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, you got that wrong, homie.
Yeah.
Here you go. Try
Right,
again.
like, yeah, not gonna work, bitch. Haha.
Yeah.
Like, go and try it again. Take some notes. You need me to lead this?
Can you
Interesting. Did they say
imagine?
whatever happened to her?
I actually want to do some more research on this lady because let's see. I can quickly look while you kind of
You
go
know,
over.
they just murdered her and covered it
I'm
up.
sure they probably burned her.
Yeah, like,
Well,
She was a
oh,
witch.
ah,
yeah,
she did.
this
She
one's
didn't live.
lush.
Sorry. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, I figured.
Yeah.
You know, what's interesting is that the Protestant church has a strong belief on exorcisms as well and does like a high amount of exorcisms. It was, what was I reading in the timeline? The 1900s, the Pentecostal movement emerged in America amongst the evangelical Pentecostals. And Martin Luther introduced an expansion on their writings about, or I'm sorry, that was not the 1900s. Martin Luther in the 1500s expanded the Protestant baptism rites to include infant exorcism. So, along with the infant baptisms, he included passages to basically exorcise any evil that might be associated with the baby as they're, an infant. And that would stay with them supposedly throughout their lifetime. So the baby would reject devil, sin, and evil as they grew up. But they had to go through that initial exorcism, which that was pretty like radical at that time to be doing
Yeah.
that. But then it emerged again in the 1900s with the Pentecostal movement.
Of course, we
It's,
need Pentecostals.
the speaking in tongues. So, yeah, it apparently revived itself. And the idea of receiving supernatural gifts from the Holy Spirit caused the movement to attract new members, but also caused people to be like, well, are they possessed by the Holy Spirit or by something else? So.
Yeah, I went to a Pentecostal church and it's wild.
I have to believe that. God, I don't even want to say that because that sounds like I'm making a generalization, which I probably am. But in the US, there have been a lot of deaths of children that were claimed to be gone through exorcisms that were of the Pentecostal faith. And I know we were talking about violent exorcisms. So most recently was the 3-year-old in San Jose, California. That was a Pentecostal church. And the child was taken into the church for the exorcism. And that was very violent. They said he was asphyxiated, deprived of food. They forced him to vomit. I'm assuming to vomit up the spirit. I have no idea. That's sad. Like, that's heartbreaking, a 3-year-old.
Right.
And I was curious. I'm always curious when I hear these cases about kids that are being exorcised. Like, what in the world were they doing that these people thought this warrants? Like, this is a possession. And because we hear about the Catholic Church being so strict about what they're going to deem a possession. And apparently, this kid, the mom claimed, he would wake up randomly crying and screaming at night.
Well, then,
That was possession. That was warranting
wow.
that.
I think I need a priest then because my daughter, she's been doing that since she was 2.
Well, like, kids get nightmares, man. Like, even as adults, we get nightmares.
The night
Like,
terrors or just
Yeah.
colic. I don't know.
yeah, it's heartbreaking. But what's even sadder is that there's a list of them. And it's similar age ranges, which is even more heartbreaking because they're so young. But like in Maryland, there was, kids that she killed 2 of her kids, or the kids were killed during an exorcism. North Carolina, a 4-year-old was killed during an exorcism. In Missouri, a 4-year-old was beaten and killed in an exorcism. In Atlanta, a 5-year-old. And like these are just within the last like 5 years. Like this is just sad, And all I did was search child exorcisms in the US, and guess what? Just boom, 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 article after article. And none of these kids make it because otherwise they wouldn't be writing
Mhm.
about it. But it's heartbreaking. They're young, 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 year olds. And I'm like, really? Is that who the devil's attacking, or demons?
No. Well, and think about it too. Think how not possible that would be, because I mean, if you think about a lot of the things that revolve around exorcism or around possessions in general, especially when a demon wants you, the demon targets people who are specifically just down, beaten by, by life. Life has impacted them in a way to where they are vulnerable, and so they take advantage of that vulnerability. Children have so much hope and everything. So the only reason I would see for them to possess a child would be to ruin another family's life, but they're not really going to want. I don't know. You just don't hear about children's possessions, like really young children's possessions, very often, because they're just so full of happiness in life, and I think they don't. I don't know. They don't care. They haven't been beaten by life yet.
Well, we've talked about this too in horror movie topics. The idea that it's terrifying, and that's why they show kids in movies being possessed. Like we see kids, maybe teenagers. You rarely see adults in movies possessed, right? It is almost always kids, because that juxtaposition of having something so youthful and innocent and joyful, or spinning its head around and spitting up pea soup and saying awful, vulgar things, that's scarier, right? Than an adult doing that. And I think sometimes it's the parent that has the mental illness
Mm.
in real life, and they see that within their
Mm-hmm.
kids, and unfortunately that impacts the child, because then they go through these brutal home exorcisms or amateur exorcisms, except for the one in San Jose, which apparently took place in the church. Most of them are done at home, and it's heartbreaking. It
And as
sucks.
we know, religious, there's nothing more crazy than a religious fanatic. And especially when if they have mental illness and they rely so heavily on that religious background, but they were probably abused with that religion, and so now they use that religion as another form of abuse, and unfortunately, the only person that suffers is the child.
Yeah. Yeah, the mom in Atlanta, with the 5-year-old, she was posting about this. I don't understand how nobody had like checked that, like into that, because apparently she had been posting online about how her child's possessed, and it was over time. It's not like something that happened in a day and then the child was, deceased the next day. This was probably something that could have been identified and someone reported on, because she was talking about, like, I think one of her posts said this is a whole demon in a child body. And like, she tried to message or like tag a priest on a post, and I need to speak with you urgently. I surprised death attacks from my 5-year-old, and I've been able to weaken his powers through our blood. I don't even know what that means, but stuff like this, I think someone really people saw it. Someone should have just been like, yeah, someone check on that child. This woman fully believes her child is
Mm-hmm.
possessed. That cannot be a healthy situation.
Yeah, yeah. There should have been intervention, but I
Yeah.
mean that's the thing. It's a scary thing to jump into, unless you physically see it happening right in front of you. Like, well, when do you make the decision to go, you know, I think she's crazy. I think we should take her child
We
away from
need
her.
to remove that
Yeah.
child. Well, she sees her demon as a monster and like an evil presence threat. That's a situation where what is she going to do to defend
Yeah.
herself, right? Like that just, I don't know. It's just sad.
There was a movie about that actually. There was I don't know if you remember, I forget what it was called. I watched it one time in the movie theater, and I was still like, but it starts off by this mom and dad, and they're like trying to put their daughter in the oven, and then like literally trying to
Whoa.
kill her, right? Like trying to kill her. Like there, she's evil. We need to kill her. So
Yeah.
the Child Protective Services breaks in, gets her, and they get arrested and sent to jail, and she ends up adopting this little girl. Well, turns out the little girl is a demon. And so, they were absolutely
You're not
100% right.
helping the
They're
cause here.
100% right. Where they're like, no, you don't understand. She's a demon. And so, yeah,
Okay, but here's the thing. Let's say hypothetically, one or a few of these children are actually possessed.
yeah,
Like, let's just go on a limb here. Don't do it yourself. You're not suddenly a trained exorcist. And maybe seek non lethal options. I'm just saying,
yeah,
like
Don't,
beating
yeah,
a
don't cook the
child,
baby.
restraining a child, beating a child, forcing a child to vomit, like those, possessed or not, your child is not going to come out of that alive.
yeah.
Okay, period. That like even if you get the demon out, quote unquote, heavy, thick, bold quotes, like you're not going to eat. Like let's say you get the demon out, your child's not surviving that. Do not do that to a child. Like what in the world?
Yeah, the only demons
I mean,
you should be exercising and getting out at home is like right after a spicy bowl of ramen.
Oh my gosh.
Otherwise, you got to do it. You got to enlist a professional.
that's a bad demon, I tell you.
Yeah,
He has demon and demonic diarrhea. Um,
this is spicy.
oh shade.
Well, like even if the kid did survive, like mentally, they're gonna be fucked up
They're
for the
not
rest of their
okay.
life. Not okay at all.
I mean, and the reality of it is there is probably more of that going on than we realize, right? How many kids probably are surviving these brutal exorcisms because it is still common. It's just not as talked about. The only reason we hear about it is because something went really wrong, right? So, how many kids are being traumatized through these, I mean, well, exorcisms?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It's tough because like if you're, it's like I'm religious. I'm not really religious as much. I believe in a lot of different things, and
You're
it's.
spiritual?
I'm not going to say that on air. I'm spiritual, not religious.
I'm spiritual.
No, it's just I've always ever since uh ever since my pastor in the Baptist church that we went to when I was a kid, he got accused of the sexual stuff by one of the girls there, and so he left, and everyone adored this man. And so he left, and it kind of split the church up. And then my mom kind of made the decision, like, hey, you know what? We're gonna look at other stuff. We started looking at other stuff, and we found these churches that were basically they kind of built their whole ideology off of what I kind of was thinking about even as a teenager was like, what if everything's connected, right? What if there's just every single belief system is all intertwined and all connected, but just, asshole humans decided they wanted to be separate and they wanted to develop their own thing and their own spin. It's like Samsung and Apple. It's the same shit. They just got a different operating system. That's it. So what if everything is connected? And we started looking at these churches, and it really got me believing, like, I don't know where I was going with this, but I feel like there's more out there than just black and white demons, angels. There's going to be a lot of other stuff out there that we don't understand. There's going to be a lot of, and I'm sure a lot of these other religions, I'm sure a lot of these other um, practices have found a way, and they've like, oh man, like the Judaic religion, like the old Hebrew, like the Orthodox Hebrew way. uh one of them that I was reading about, one of the ways that they exorcise a demon is that they say a bunch of prayers, like one over and over and over, right? And then they take this horn, this ram horn, and they blow it, and that's supposed to shatter the body because of specific notes in the ram horn that are supposed to shatter the body and to shake the demon or the entity out of the body. And at that point, uh, then they ask it questions. Hey, why are you possessing this person? Hey, why? Who are you? What do you need? Like, can you please leave the body? And how can we make you comfortable so that you can actually leave the body? Which is crazy to me.
Only because you said
Right.
please.
Right.
I mean,
Sure.
first of all, you just shattered me. Like, what the fuck? I'm not comfortable as it
I should
is.
play his
Like, come
blue
on.
horn. Playing some music for him. That's all.
Yeah.
How very polite of them. I think they beat the Catholic Church on politeness. Could you please leave?
Right.
Please just
Um,
go.
Yeah. Yeah.
so I feel like that what you're saying about the connection to the unified and, everybody kind of split into their own beliefs is just like we kind of Tower of Babbled ourselves.
Kind
And
of.
now we're trying to put it back together.
Yeah.
Um, do you know what I found really interesting when I was looking up exorcisms around the world? There's a lot of coverage going on right now when it comes to exorcisms about like in Mexico, because of the violence that's increasing, the drug violence. But it's not just drug related violence. So apparently, the violence is becoming very ritualistic. There's a lot of human sacrifice, there's a lot of dismembered, tortured bodies that is very more on a ritual sacrifice level versus drug violence that was typically seen. And there's a lot of exorcists that have been moved in by the Catholic Church into Mexico. Each diocese in Mexico is given one exorcist, and I think there was something
So wait. So are the dismembered bodies and like the rituals being performed by these priests that are being moved in, or are they being performed by the
by
locals,
the drug
like or
cartel.
curanderos? Oh, by the cartels.
Yeah.
Okay, got
So
it.
here's what's or so they, like that's what they believe. They're saying that there is such a high demand for exorcism requests in Mexico now that they've moved in as many exorcists as they can to support each diocese within Mexico. They said there's such a high demand that some exorcists can't take on new cases, that they're exorcising demons like daily. And one of the exorcists, one of the fathers that does it, he said that most of the services that they tend to do are what are called liberation prayers, which are effective on people who still control part of their mind and body. So it's like a partial possession, right? And so they'll try and intervene at that point and do what are called the liberation prayers to get that demon away from the person. If it is a full possession, so they no longer have control of their mind and body, they have to call in a bishop of the diocese who has to handle that exorcism along with a team. They attribute in one of the, so there's like a Father Bautista. He and a lot of the exorcists in Mexico actually attribute the increased numbers of exorcism and the way that the drug related violence is now including human sacrifices to the introduction and the large numbers of people joining the cult of Saint Death or Santa Muerte. So Santa Muerte is becoming very popular,
Mm-hmm.
and it's obviously it's
They're basically worshiping
following the
death.
saint of
Yeah.
death. Yeah. And it's estimated that the cult, so the followers worship basically a skull in a wedding dress
Mm-hmm.
carrying a scythe.
Yeah.
And they estimate that it's got about 8 million followers in Mexico now. So it's like boosted.
So you think they're doing rituals to kind of as kind of sacrifices for her, for Lady Death?
Uh, According to some of the exorcists there who have worked directly with cartel members and drug traffickers, they are doing that in the name of Santa Muerte. So the sacrifice is like before, not that it was just, but before it was standard drug violence and murder. Now there is an occult kind of aspect to
Mm.
it where they're seeing tortured, dismembered human sacrifice type scenarios. And they've worked with a few of the cartel members and drug traffickers and gang members, and basically it's adopted by them to avoid arrest and to make money, and in exchange they offer human sacrifices.
Well, and one thing that we know for sure is if enough people decide that they believe in it, uh, makes it real.
Yeah. this is the amount of how much it's caught on. So 12 years ago, this woman placed a tribute to Santa Muerte figure in her window. And now there's a huge festival that they have outside of her home, basically, where they kind of worship this figure and this statue. That's only 12 years ago. And now there's a full festival. And people believe that like that saint of death loves them, heals them, and they come to this festival to ask for her help. There was a father who went to the festival to see kind of what was going on with the people, and he said during his time there's like a shrine there now. People would like approach the shrine on their knees. One of them approached it with their newborn baby asking for a blessing. um they present their babies to this skull death figure. And
What are the origins of Santa Muerte?
beats me. I've only heard it recently becoming more and more and more popular. I'm sure maybe it's been around longer than that, right? To have like at least 8 million followers in Mexico alone. Because it's here too. It's in the
Yeah,
US
for
too. I've
sure.
seen people reference it, but it's fairly new. If you look it up, it says the following of Santa Muerte began in Mexico in the mid 20th century and was clandestine? I can never say that right.
Tomato, tomato.
It was pretty private until the 1990s, but now it's like, I'm loud and I'm proud.
Hmm. Mexican neo-paganism. That's interesting.
So if you include Central America, the US, and Canada, it has about 20 million followers.
Mictecaciguatl, meaning Lady of the Dead. Aztec mythology is a death deity and consort of Mictlancutli, god of the dead and ruler of Mictlan. So, I mean, that might be the origin of it. I don't think it would come from Spain, but I'm just thinking, like, there's got to be something going on. There's got to be something driving these people, and they got them wrapped up, right? It's got it wrapped up. So there might be this ancient deity or ancient demon or presence that's influencing these areas.
So it sounds like it began in the Aztec Empire, but when the Spanish came over with their Catholicism influence, they kind of stamped it down, but it was still able to survive to an extent. And now it's like, it's a rejection. It's a rejection of the Catholic Church. And, you know, at least in the Latin history of things, there is a big movement over the past, like, oh God, I want to say 3 decades now, to go back to the Aztec roots. We see that movement within the U.S. and the Chicano
Holy shit,
movement is very much trying to go back.
we could do an entire podcast on this topic alone.
Yeah, and we probably will spread over into it because, like, with
cool.
that movement, I'm willing to bet this came up with it.
Yeah, that's scary.
But this is not equal to Day of the Dead. I know a lot of
No.
people would make that association. That is not the same.
Yeah, Day of the Dead is more of like an honorarium to to those that have passed and to the
Yeah,
ancestors.
it's a reverence.
It's a reverence, exactly. This is something I mean, I've heard of it before. I never just really did any research, and this is fascinating to do research. Now I'm really kind of like hooked. I'm kind of hooked.
We're gonna have to do a podcast episode on
I'm kind
this.
of hooked, yeah.
And so the reason I brought that up is because the priests in the Catholic Church do believe this has a lot to do with the desanctification of Mexico and desecration. Now, what's interesting, I didn't know this was possible. I thought you could only exorcise people. So in 2015, the Catholic Church, so like we're talking about the official Catholic Church, or not like individual churches, the main Catholic Church,
Please tell me they exercised a cat.
they performed a ritual exorcism on the entire country of Mexico.
Oh. So they exercised a country.
I heard about that.
Yeah, apparently you can exorcise a country. And that is what they
Can
did.
we do that on the United States?
Who says they haven't? So this was released in the news. They felt Mexico had gotten so completely out of control with the occult and what was going on. They were overwhelmed with exorcism requests that the church decided to do a full exorcism on Mexico. They said it would not be overnight and it wouldn't fix everything, but that
No.
that amount of light would hopefully kind of help the country move in the right direction. So I don't think it's worked, but maybe they need to do it again.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think
Yeah.
it's worked either. It's crazy. I don't know. I hear a bunch of things about the cartel all the time because I work with a lot of Mexicans, and like they have a lot of family down there. They have a lot of ties to there, and they just tell me, they kind of keep me updated. Like, oh yeah, the new president. He's very popular because he's basically made it okay for the cartels to just do their business as long as there's no killing.
Do what thou will. Well, now they're killing in the name
Killing in
of
the
death.
name of.
Yeah, and it's still very like it's only getting more dangerous. You
Mm-hmm.
hear about people going over for medical treatment, disappearing, and then they're finding their dismembered bodies, decapitated bodies somewhere
Yep.
else. And there is something to be said about what these priests are saying. You know, I don't know if it's demons, maybe just people doing evil things is demonic. I don't know. But the violence has changed. Before it was shooting, right? Like people were being pew pewed. Now you hear about decapitated bodies, dismembered bodies.
It's
Uh,
sacrifices. Yeah.
yeah, bodies found with animal heads.
Yeah.
I remember dogs are being taken of people and decapitated as well. So there was that one um, cartel member who he and his dog were taken and both were decapitated and left in a very kind of ritualistic manner. So I hope this episode doesn't get us like marked.
I mean, and how long will it spill? Before it spills into the U.S. territory. I mean, I keep seeing news stories like, oh, family of or 10 people were found brutally murdered in I don't know, Tracy, somewhere where no one ever wants to go.
Yeah.
All coincidentally are Latino and undocumented, or all coincidentally were kind of tied to crime or something like that. And it just reeks of kind of like, oh, they probably pissed off the wrong person or pissed off the cartel, or who knows. But God, how scary is that?
Stop saying cartel. We're going to get flagged.
If Joe Rogan can do it, I mean, we can.
Please don't send her on me. No, I'm more concerned about the Lady of Death being sent after me. So
Yeah.
I'm Mexican. I'm
Absolutely.
superstitious.
Superstitious. Hey, if it's to all my cartel homies
Superstitions.
out there, like if it's any difference, I
Stop
revere the
it.
Lady of Death, and hey guys, I'm on board.
Oh my God. I'm editing that out. That's going to be next.
I just like how at first, they bring all these different exorcists. It's like the Avengers of Exorcists down there to take care of it, and then they just like
Avengers of Exorcist.
exorcise the whole freaking
Yeah,
country. They're like, all right, the Avengers didn't work. Fucking, let's do the country.
I know.
I mean, let's be real. It's noble. Like whether it's real or not, we can set that aside. Whether we believe there are actual demons occurring in Mexico or it's driven by the devil, the idea that they're trying to help, they believe in their hearts there is something truly evil happening and they're trying to
I don't know
help.
though, because like I mean, check it out. So what if it's the opposite? Like, what if the Mexican people, or what, or the entirety of South America? I don't know how far um, Santa Muerta
It goes
expands.
Central America
Central America.
and
So
beyond.
what if these people that live in these countries are just kind of over it? Like, hey, Catholicism isn't doing a damn thing, and we're still getting murdered every day. So hey, if we can't beat them, join them. And if we're worshiping the same entity, and we're paying tribute to the same entity, then maybe we'll be left alone. And of course, when they do that, the town is prosperous, and they're worshiping this entity Santa Muerta, and of course they probably are protected by these same people, these violent people who are also worshiping Santa Muerta. I don't know. It's probably more of like a rebellious. I mean, it is neo-paganism, but it's more of a rebellious against the Catholic Church. And hey, like you're not doing anything, so we're going to kind of thing.
Well, like I said, it's a return to the Aztec roots
Hmm.
pre
Hmm.
invasion. And so it's a rejection of all of that, which the Catholic Church does represent.
Well, the
And so I
colonizers.
can see
Yeah.
that. Yeah, yeah, I can see that rejection
Hmm.
completely. And I see what you're saying, if you can't beat them, join them. And maybe there's an aspect to it, like we don't understand. We're looking at it at a lens of what people are doing in the name of. But not everybody's doing that. The people are presenting their children to the shrine, the people that are doing their altar, rituals, they're not sacrificing people. So it's kind of like God, right? Like people do really awful things in the name of God, but then there are people that do really good things. So that's kind of maybe what this is. It's a little scary to us because we're like, whoa, you're worshiping death, Lady of Death. But I don't know much about it. So this probably is a whole other episode where we got to research who is this Lady of Death?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, honestly, if it goes back all the way to Aztec roots, I mean, it's been here a while, and to influence this many people, even today, we definitely have to do some digging.
Yeah, I don't know. I definitely would love to pursue that topic more because I think there's so much we could bite into. So, speaking of Hispanic cultures, let's talk about the curandera because curanderas also do types of exorcisms.
Yes.
Well, they're medicine men, or is there a female curandera?
Curanderas were traditionally women.
Really? That's something I didn't
Yes.
know.
Yeah, curanderas were traditionally
That's
women.
hot.
Over time, they they started including men. Look, progressive us, but actually, they were traditionally women.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I remember that from the other podcast way back in what, season 1 or 2? Sheesh.
yeah, and it goes once again back to the Aztecs. So it was a practice that went back to the Aztecs. Medicine women, curanderas. They used herbs. They used different. It's natural healing, and the one common thing that still carries through to present day curanderas is
Hmm.
the eggs that are used in rituals. And it's used anything from dispelling possession to getting rid of the ojo, which is the evil eye, and susto, which is just basically you're stuck in a scared state. And that can draw in negative energy, which draws in bad entities. So getting rid of that. Um,
Yeah, I feel like they represented the curandero rather well, and like the practices in La Llorona.
you better watch how many times you say that name.
Yeah, that's gonna. Yeah, I'm done.
That movie was horrible.
He said I'm done. Yeah, I've always been curious about because I grew up with that kind of world, and I've always been curious how the egg is the thing. Like, what about the egg? Because they do it, and the traditions carried on, but they don't ever say why. Why the egg? Um, Basically, it's a whole ritual, but the general idea, and please know there's more to it than this. I'm just kind of watering it down for sake of time. But you roll the egg on the person, you crack the egg into a cup or a glass, and some curanderos are trained to read the egg in the cup, and they can tell you if there's something attached to you, if there's something wrong. They can, it's like tea leaf reading, kind of, right? Like if there's something going on with you. Some don't read it, but they tell you to place that underneath your bed for at least 24 hours, I believe, few days, and that basically soaks in when you sleep. It soaks in the negative that's attached to you, whether it's a spirit, whether it's ojo, whether it's susto. Like it soaks it into the glass, and the glass will change color, or like the egg yolk will change color, and the stuff in the glass will change over the days as it absorbs the negative. Once you're done, you take it to your toilet and you flush it away, and then you should be good. There are a lot of people that swear by that. Like that
It's not
fixes
the only
things.
culture that does it.
I've
Yeah.
seen that happen before. Actually, I've seen that performed. I think when I was younger.
Are you sure he wasn't making an omelet?
No, no. So my aunt married this guy from Mexico, and his mom was like, my aunt swears she was a witch, and put a curse on her and stuff. But like I've seen that lady do stuff like this all the time when we were younger. So that's trippy that you even brought that up.
So she was just a curandera,
Now be very careful you don't call a curandera a witch.
right?
Because there are curanderas, which are healers, and then there are brujas, which are witches.
Yeah,
And
So the
which is I
bruja
probably
is
think
a
that's what
witch.
she was. But yeah,
yeah, the
Okay.
brujas are the witches.
yeah.
And yeah, so curanderas will use natural healing to help people get rid of things. Brujas are the ones who are putting the things on you. So
Yeah, I would say shaman would be the most appropriate word, and that's why I said they're not the only culture that does something similar to that as a practice. When I practice Celtic shamanism, one of their practices to clear your mind before you start meditating is to imagine yourself in a field, and in that field is a well, and you have to approach the well, and you're literally dropping all of your problems, the visible problems now, into that well, and then you just imagine yourself turning into a wolf and then running into the forest, and then you turn into an eagle and start flying, and then that's when the
that's
meditation
cool.
starts beginning. But you feel so at ease, and I actually walked my mom through this a couple times, when I used to practice it, and I remember her feeling really at ease and really like, I was like, okay, wow, that's good. But yeah, it's not the only religious practice. I think the just the art of shamanism in general, they all have very similar ways to cleanse you, with different symbols, and it might be the power of suggestion. It might be the fact that you think that your problems are going, or that your bad energy is going into that egg, and then with it you're flushing it down. So then your bad energy is going flushing down the toilet, so it's gone. So now you're at ease. Maybe.
I mean, but perception is reality. So
Correct.
let's say you do have negative energy attached to you, whether it's stuff you are drawing in or something that someone put on you. Let's say someone put a curse on you, they put a hole on you, and you have that attached to you. Our energy can typically be strong enough to cut those ties, but sometimes we need that help, right? So maybe, like you said, that visualization, that visualize you're cutting that and it's being soaked in by the yolk, you may inadvertently be healing yourself from that just because your energy is in effect shedding it and cutting it off itself, because our energy is pretty damn strong. So
Yeah.
you're basically cutting
Yeah.
cords, but with the help of a curandera.
With a guide. Yeah. With a, I think,
Yes,
I think,
with a
yeah, with a
guide.
lot of that stuff, you need a spiritual guide to walk you through it.
Now, a lot of those rituals came from the Aztec, but with the influence of the Spanish, church, the Catholicism, obviously now curanderas include prayers and Catholic prayers, and there are things that have kind of, become a hybrid with that. And depending who you go to, where their emphasis is, you might find a curandera. They're hard to find, but guess what? With the rejection of the Catholic Church, what's happening? More curanderas are emerging and they're training, but without the influence of that. So it's more of the traditional practices, using herbal remedies, using visual remedies. So, for example, white candles represent enlightenment, spirituality, and health and protection, but then red candles are chosen to cleanse and cut negative energies. So, those may have a Catholic influence. I don't know if the Catholic Church uses color candles like that, but it is a lot more visual, right? It is a lot more visual now. So depending who you go to, they may include prayer that you recognize from Catholicism, or they may not. It may be more of like an herbal remedy, which to some people sounds like, you know, a cottage witch or, an herbal witch, but don't ever call them a witch.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's out from an outside perspective. I think anyone would find it very hard to distinguish like the difference between those two. What's a shaman? Like if you don't know what a shaman is, and you're coming into it like, well, they're a medicine man, or they're a witch, or they're a somebody who practices rituals that are not of my religion. And it's going to be hard to distinguish those. But you got to think
Yeah.
these practices, people who've been performing shamanism or practicing shamanism, curanderos, uh, they've been doing it for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, and it's being passed down, from legacy to legacy. It's just a tradition. It's in these people's bloods. And when I say these people, I mean the curanderos, the actual people who are practicing these things. They're a separate group in their own, because they've been practicing and keeping these old ways alive. Which really, and that might be another reason why they um, resent the Catholic Church, is because the Catholic Church has always been known for what? No, if it's not our way, it's the wrong way. What? Stop it. We're gonna I don't know, put your head in a vice or something like that until you tell us that you love God. And they've always been that way of like, hey, this is it, or there's no other way. There is no, you can practice your own religion. This is the only religion. And people who have been practicing the same old ways for 1,000 years uh, will resent that. And in the colonizer mentality, it's like, hey, we don't want you here. Get out.
Did you guys ever watch Red Panda?
Yeah.
Where she's got the red panda they have to exercise out of her, basically. And the idea that to create the circle, they have to sing. And it didn't matter what they sang, as long as they were singing, because it was positive vibrations. It was raising vibrations. And curanderas in the church, and like the Catholic Church, the Christian church, whatever church, in a lot of these exorcisms, prayer is what's used to get these spirits or these entities away from a person. And to me, it's a very similar concept. It's I know the Catholic Church isn't singing it, but when curanderas pray, oftentimes there is like almost like a song sound
Mm-hmm.
to it. And you see that with the Native Americans when they chant any kind of chanting to keep spirits away and to raise that kind of spirituality within the tribe. It is a singing.
Tibetans,
And yeah, and the Tibetans
Buddhists,
sing. And
yeah.
so it's that elevated
Mm-hmm.
vibration through that song. There is something different that happens to our energy when we vibrate through song versus just speak. And there's a power that kind of pushes it through too. So I find
Interesting.
that interesting that we see that, yeah, in a lot of different cultures. It doesn't
Hmm.
matter what you sing as long as that vibration aligns with whatever your intention
I think
is.
you're onto something. It kind of ties back to the Judaic belief, where or the exorcism, right, where they blow the horn and the different notes and everything vibrate their body, or shatter their body, is what they say, and then they're able to then perform the rest of the rite. But that's kind of interesting that sonic vibrations would help or soothe you. I mean, Tibetans, Buddhists, they believe that you can achieve enlightenment if you chant the same chant over and over in a certain way, and then eventually you can achieve enlightenment because you freed your body, and you're free from your body. But it's hmm that might be something.
If you've never seen The Old Ways on Netflix, I would recommend it. It's a film about exorcism, but by a curandera, and it takes place in like total remote. I think is it Mexico, John?
I think so. Yeah.
I want to say it's Mexico, but it might be. Um, I want to double check myself. Yeah, Mexican American. Yeah, in Veracruz. So she actually, although I think they call her a bruja, but it's yeah. That's the one thing that I was like, I don't think you got that quite right. But she is the curandera, and that movie when they're showing like some of the stuff that they're putting you through to exercise the spirit, especially when they show the scene of her mom who's possessed. I'm like, holy shit, I've seen that before. That's scary. Not the mom being possessed, but like the rituals
Yeah.
and the ceremonies they were doing. I'm like, oh my gosh, no,
Yeah. Yeah. It's,
not again. Just kidding.
yeah.
Yeah, I would say that's a really solid film. There's a few things where I'm like, I don't think that's a thing, but you know, creative licensing, it's fiction. But there was quite a bit that was pretty spot on. Where I think a lot of people who are from a Latin background can watch that and equally be like, ooh, that hits me in a way I don't want it to.
Yeah, and there's that level of traditionalism. The oh my god, this has been happening in our culture for centuries, and it's like, yeah, I'm sure it hits a spot because your mom and dad have been raised to believe that that stuff exists, and their mom and dads, and their mom and dads, and it's like the whole. It's funny because you think, to some extent, you've heard La Llorona is gonna come
Stop
and
it!
get you. It's two, by the way, folks. Two. Second time.
I'm about to disconnect you. Oh my gosh.
She had to turn.
And
She
my
had to
light just went out.
turn.
Oh my gosh, how dare you!
One more time for the people in the back.
The traditionalism and everything, and that's why you feel the she who should not be named might
Thank
come.
you.
Um,
You just don't call. So remember, we revisit at the beginning of the episode. You said if someone believes it enough, it's real. And so for me, there's enough of that energy attached to that word that I'm like, you know what? I don't want to draw something in. I don't want to manifest that because I do have a level of belief kind of inside the energy that gets triggered by it. So let's just not.
okay,
I
so
get that, but
Voldemort.
there's also been an episode where you said it like 4 or 5 times
Ooh, in
too.
your face.
I did not.
You
I
did
said
though,
it probably like twice.
maybe 3, but yeah, you might be
And
right.
actually, what's funny is you don't actually have to call her.
Right.
No, she just comes because I don't know.
Calling her makes it faster, but
Right.
technically
Yeah,
you
we
don't
don't.
have to call her.
Yeah.
She's not like you summon me.
Right. You rang. Yes. No.
You
I
rang.
didn't. I sure didn't.
Yeah, I feel like I would really like to explore because I only had so much time to look up all of this stuff, but I would really like to explore if exorcisms occur. I'm sure there's some form, right? Because what is an exorcism? It's dispelling spirits and or
Expelling,
evil
or
entities. Um,
whatever you call them. Yeah.
whatever's
Mhm.
invasive that's not supposed to be there. And so I'm curious to see what other like how prevalent is that in, Poland, Germany, Russia, like all the different places because there's a Catholic influence in most of those places. But what about the non-Catholicism? We know it's prevalent in Catholicism and in the Puritan church and in, you
I
know,
mean, exorcisms were being done in the Middle East and a ton of other countries. They had their different ways to do it. They believe, hey, this person has a bad entity inside them, and it needs to be, um, expelled. And so this is, yeah, and this is said ritual to do it. It's funny because I thought it was really depressing because there's they call it psychosurgery, or so I think it's called psychosurgery, which is just another name for lobotomy, and
oh,
that
okay.
was their cure all for possession, because there are scientific communities that believe in possession, and that's their solution, is to liquefy your frontal lobe, turn you into a zombie, and then leave you in a cell and it's in a penitentiary and forget about you.
Yeah, I mean, the idea of an entity taking over or help, like being a part of a host, that's not new. That's not isolated to one culture or one tradition. Even like the wave of like new age, spiritual and metaphysical, there's people do believe you can draw in negative energy that's associated to non human entities, and you got to work on getting rid of that through different methods. And we all believe that to an extent, right? Even if you're an atheist and you don't believe in that, atheists believe in psychological, conditions where a person is taken over by something else within themselves. It's just a different personality, or it's a different, there's something going on, and they may not call it a spirit or an entity, or they think it exists solely within that individual. But we all do have this idea that a person can display behaviors that are not their own and do need help getting back to their regular homeostasis state of being.
I have a thought on that. And actually,
Okay.
this was what I was going to originally say too, because I know John and yourself, you guys do a lot of ghost hunting, right? Uh,
No, no, no. That's a John
oh, it's a
thing.
John thing.
I've done it once with
That
John.
was a,
She's done it once, yeah.
got it.
I
Okay.
think I know where you're going with this, and I'm glad. Go
Let's
for it.
go.
So I was actually going to bring up one individual person, and his name is Zach Bagans.
Your favorite person, of course.
She loves him.
So how? I mean, obviously he's full of shit, right? So when I watch his deeply intelligent films about his investigations, sometimes he gets a little antsy in the pantsy and says he's been possessed by a spirit, and then he goes in and then attacks one of his cast members, which are one of his other investigators or the camera guy, and grabs him, and it becomes violent. It just really looks like really awkward and weird. And so I don't know, as a ghost hunter, has that ever happened to you, to where you feel like maybe something is entering your body, non-physically?
Uh, Honestly, no. To me, no. There was an instance where I was out investigating with some people, and somebody that was part of the team believed he was being possessed. That's a whole long story, not my story to tell, but like it was early on in my investigative days, and yeah, I didn't know whether or not they were fucking with me or if it was an actual thing.
So you think that he believed it enough?
I believe that he believed it enough. Like there was coughing up of blood
Oh,
and everything else. Yeah, it was a whole thing.
I
Um,
mean, you you had me a little skeptical until you said the coughing up of the blood. So unless he had,
Yeah.
the fucking consumption from the Wild West days,
right.
I got the consumption.
I got the
Yeah.
consumption.
Well, and it's funny too because I had thought maybe me just thinking every other thing. Maybe he had like a little blood pellet in his mouth or something and
Mm.
cracked
So
it
you
and
were
spit
super
it out.
skeptical when you went into the
I was at
investigation.
first, and then like later on, stuff kept happening, and I was like, all right, this could possibly be something.
Interesting.
So
So he
yeah,
could
it
very
was.
well have been possessed, and he might still be
Yeah.
possessed. He might be dead.
No, definitely not still.
Okay.
He did have a bunch of stuff happen to him for weeks afterwards. Um, we did the whole St. Michael's prayer and stuff, holy water stuff while we were there.
So at one point, you started thinking that he was possessed at some point, or something was
Yes,
going
I
on
mean
with him. So you
it was
basically were
just yeah.
okay.
And keep in mind, I had only known these people probably for about a couple months.
Mm,
So again, I still, back in my mind, still kind of thought maybe they were fucking with me a little bit.
mm.
But as stuff progressed, I was kind of maybe not.
So I'm going to go ahead and quote some Fright Night here. And you have to have faith for that to work.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I hear about like people on investigations. They're like, well, we did a prayer. We said this prayer. We did that prayer. And I'm like, did you believe that prayer? Because I think it's habit. Just like when people go to
Right,
church and they're like, okay, here we go again. We're going to the Hail Mary or whatever. And it's like, did you believe it? Because the energy is everything. And if your energy ain't vibrating with that,
right. Absolutely no. So here's the thing: is you obviously know that I'm not very religious. I don't really whatever. But in that moment, yeah, I believed it. It was gonna work. It was gonna do whatever it needed to do because I was not sleeping in the room next to this bullshit happening. So I was like, no, we're good.
So I'm going to quote the nun too. So you have to have faith in order for the most miracles to happen and work, right? The faith is what makes them true.
Yeah.
So just like Fright Night, right? So I feel like the same goes with possession. Maybe is if you believe it enough, you believe that you're susceptible, or you believe that you're feeling something, and you might open yourself, up to that.
To something.
Yeah, it's gonna happen. It's just like the my inability to see any kind of spiritual activity at all. I don't give a
Right.
shit. I'm not seeing it.
Don't want
Don't
it.
want it.
And I'm going to quote George Michael. You gotta have faith.
Do, do, do. Faith in yourself, faith that
Yeah.
it's true and it's going to work, because just like the egg and just like the chanting and just like the
You have to
singing,
believe.
like if you put your energy into it and you believe, then you're going to manifest that shit
Right.
God, can we
one way or another.
put that on a shirt?
Manifest that shit.
Manifest that shit.
Yes, I want it
Three
on a
haunted.
shirt.
Manifest that shit.
Manifest that shit.
There you go. That'll be cool.
Copyright.
Manifest that shit. I think people can be possessed by anything, including their own internal dark
Mhm.
thoughts. And whether it be supernatural or psychological, I think people can also free themselves from that as long as they have faith. Do.
Monomania. Monomania, the psychological belief that you are, in fact, possessed.
So be careful what you open yourself up to.
Always.
Yes.
Don't try that at
Yep.
home, kids.
Don't summon demons. It's bad for you.
Bad for people around you, too,
Yes.
You know what I always wondered? Why they didn't just have like pools, like big ass pools that they blessed and just throw these people in, like in
Right.
batches. Just exercise their asses in like batches. You are
Exercise their
healed.
asses. Batches.
This
Exorcise, not
ass is clean.
exercise.
Exorcise.
This ass has been cleared.
I'm spiritual, not religious. You're going to exercise your ass.
In Shane's house. That happens in the bathroom.
Exercise the demons.
I've exorcised the demons. Oh, Jim.
Jesus. I'm 42 years old, and exercising the demons doesn't get any easier the older you get.
Oh my gosh. Well, just have faith. It will all turn out well. Just sing. Your wife will be like, "Why are you singing in the bathroom?"
Gotta have faith.
All right. Do we have any final thoughts before we wrap it up?
Wrap it up.
Wrap it up. I have declared this topic officially blessed.
This podcast is clean.
It is clear. All right. Same with saging, by the way. You can cleanse a home, but if all you do is light a sage and walk around,
Your house will just
I'm
smell
sorry,
good.
my friends. It's just not going to do it for you. You
No.
got to have faith that what you're doing is cleansing your house.
So what's the author Jung, Jung?
Carl?
Well, Carl Jung, yeah, right. So obviously, Ariana's huge into BTS, and as am I. I'm a big fan too. They're it's good shit. But so we've been getting a little into their concept, because they have like K-pop world. They have they have concepts of like their music and stuff, and it's their albums, and all ties in with each other. And so we did, one of his fans did this research on all their concept, and there's so many hidden symbols, all relating to Carl Jung and to a book that was written revolving around Abraxas, which is the demon, the Gnostic god Abraxas. But it all there's symbolism all within their videos, and it all, like, she does clips of all their videos, and they all are revolving around Carl Jung and his whole thought process. Like the mirror, there's scenes with when they're looking into a mirror, and because his belief was that when you're looking into a mirror, that is how you are getting in touch with your soul. And then when you finally get in touch with your soul, you are able to then transcend and go into the next, like into, you're able to like basically, what do you call it? When you have like an out of body experience,
Astral project.
astral project. And so looking at yourself, because now you're about as in touch with your soul as you would ever be, by looking at your own reflection into the mirror for a certain amount of time, then that would open up yourself to then be able to astral project, or to then like almost achieve enlightenment at that point. But this is a K-pop group. Granted that this is the biggest and most complex K-pop group, but their symbolism and stuff that behind all that was just kind of astounding. I was very impressed.
Don't do that. Don't look in the mirror until you leave your body. I'm pretty sure something else is going to take over your body for you.
Yeah, I've done that actually before. I learned all about this a long time ago, and
This is why you carry a demon.
I felt yeah. No, I'm gonna say I felt very strange, and when you look into your own eyes for a certain amount of time, you almost it feels like you're fading away, and then you kind of everything kind of starts fading out, and then you start moving, and then it's just I had to stop. It's a very strange feeling. I recommend it.
So Shane has played a paranormal game before.
Do you remember how this topic we're talking about is exorcisms around the world? You too will have your very own exorcism if you proceed to play that game.
For all of you listening,
don't do it.
Look into the mirror as long as you can, but I want you to film it. So everyone has a camera on their phone. Everyone has
oh my God.
Everyone has access to a GoPro or something like that. Film it. Just film it.
Don't do
and
it.
Put it on YouTube.
No.
I want to see what happens. And 3Haunted podcast listeners would like to know how many of you get possessed.
Oh my gosh.
The host would like to know as well.
And then we're going to continue that with an exorcism part 2, with an actual live exorcism, folks. And John is gone.
John is gone. We've got John,
like,
but it's not
he's
John.
Like, nope, I'm up.
All right, guys. Well, we had another wonderful episode. I love this topic, Shane. And now we have a second follow-up episode where we have to talk about Santa Muerte. So, yeah, boy. And we'll have BJ on that one as well, because we have
we're talking about the live exorcism one. But yes, Santa Muerte.
That too.
Yeah, that too. But we'll get BJ to play
it.
Not it.
Live BJ with
right? Like BJ.
Like it.
Yeah.
All right, John Thomas. Bring us home.
All right. Thank you, Shane, for coming on with another interesting, weird, fucking creepy ass topic. And thank you to all of our listeners for listening to this episode of 3Haunted Podcast with your host. I'm John Thomas for now.
I am always going to be Ashley Lunar Goddess. I ain't looking at no mirrors.
If you have any questions, comments, concerns, because trust me, there's going to be a couple, please feel free to email us at 300podcast@gmail.com. And if you haven't done so already, again, you're slacking, guys. It's season 4. Please like, follow, and subscribe to all of our social media. You don't want to miss amazing fucking guests like Shane.
We come for your daughter, Chuck.
Until next time.